Hey, what is up guys? GuitarRock here. Welcome back to another Reverse 1999 video. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about a couple of things. Initially, this video was going to be much more of Genesis damage in particular. Alright, so I thought this was going to be the focus of the video, but after doing more tests, I thought this is going to be a very interesting twist of turns, alright, into how you should be building your team. So in terms of team building, I think right now, all of us should be aware that you need at least a strong damage dealer, alright, preferably a 6-star, and then you want to have a healer, alright, so somebody that can heal your team. So for example, your main damage dealer can be a Lilia, can be a Eternity, can be a Centurion, Melania, alright, those characters are going to be very strong damage dealers. So you have one main damage dealer, you have one healer, this can either be Sotheby, DK that everybody gets for free, and if you don't have any of these, you could also consider building La Sauce, which a lot of players have used. Now the third slot is going to be a little bit different, right? Now this is where the flex slot comes in. So most players are going to opt in for some sort of debuffer of some sort, right? So either a debuffer, some sort of buffer in some cases, for example Soneto, or in some cases some sort of additional support characters that gives shield or give some sort of benefit to the team. Or you can also slot in another damage dealer if you want to, right? So this can also work depending on what you're trying to do. Ideally, you want to have a total of 4 characters on one team, and then you need 2 teams for the end game of Reverse 1999. If you're tackling the end game for Limbo, you are required to have at least 8 characters in total, 4 characters for each team. Now, how you are building your teams also rely on what your team can do, right? So for example, if I want to bring a debuffer in this case, I can't really put Baby Blue right here in this particular team, because Baby Blue is a debuffer that relies on doing mental defense decrease. So you can see right here on one of her skill, Tea Party. So this is going to decrease mental defense of the enemy by 25%. So if I slot her here, Lilia is not going to benefit from it as much because Lilia does reality damage, right? So she's going to be a little bit different. And then Sotheby is also a reality damage character. As you can see, she does a reality damage right here. So 120% reality damage, but she also does a little bit of Genesis damage. So this is where things gonna come in a little bit. So her poison is gonna be Genesis damage, and I want to talk a little bit more about Genesis damage and what is the best way to approach in terms of trying to improve this particular source of damage. Now, just a quick recap for those of you who might not be aware what the heck is this. So let's just go into this is Charlie. Alright, I'm gonna click on the stats. So every character is going to have either a reality damage or mental damage. So reality is more like physical damage, mental damage is more like magical damage. So it's like both of it is its own category. So each character will have one of these two. So you either build a reality team or you build a mental team. And you can see right here, Charlie, you can see she does mental damage right here, right? So she's gonna fit better in some teams. So obviously there are some characters that are more flexible and can fit in both teams, right? Now there's also reality defense and mental defense, which both corresponds to reality damage or mental damage. So if you have a high reality defense, enemy's reality damage is gonna do less damage to you in general. But notice there's no Genesis damage per se, right? So Genesis damage is true damage, alright? So if you guys are not aware, true damage, that means it's going to deal the same amount of damage regardless of enemy's defense, alright? Reality defense or mental defense. So I thought this is going to be a very interesting thing to talk about. Now, who does Genesis damage? There's a few different characters, alright? Voyager, for one, is a character that can do that based upon her counter. Now you can see right here, she has this particular skill on the Mending Sonata, alright? So this is a counter skill, and she is able to do this Interstellar Blessing, and she can deal Genesis damage to the attacker based upon this and counter the enemy accordingly, right? So this is going to be something that's very interesting. Alongside with that, we also have someone like Sotheby, which can also do Genesis damage based upon her poison. As you can see, inflicts poison status for 2 rounds, right? So, and then we also have someone that everyone has access to, aka DK. Now, I want to bring attention to her because she does a lot of damage, insanely a lot of damage with her ultimate. And I was trying to figure out what the heck is this ult. It always does so much damage and it surprises me. So if you look at this particular Maverick Judge ultimate skill, it's a one target attack and purifies stats down negative status and control statuses from herself, and she enters immunity for 1 round. So basically immune to stats down negative status and control. She does 400% of mental damage plus, you know, a percentage of the caster's attack multiplied by the Genesis damage. So I do have mine at Portray 1, so it's 130%. If yours is at Portray 0, it should be 100%. So if you go all the way to Portray 5, this is gonna be 210% of Genesis damage, which is a lot. So basing off what we discussed earlier, right, talking about reality damage and mental damage, both can be resisted by enemies' reality defense and mental defense. So Genesis damage shouldn't be able to be resisted by the enemies, right? Which is why I want to bring to this testing here today, to hopefully show you guys the results of my findings. Okay, so let's try out a debuff on this particular, this is going to be for the limbo of the last one, 16, right? So this is going to be last source right here. She doesn't have anything, any special buffs in particular, so this is going to be her ability that not yet activate. So we're gonna try to apply debuff first. So this particular one is gonna be able to apply mental defense minus 25%. So we're gonna target last source right there. Alright. So we're gonna go with this. And then we're gonna go with this. Alright, so let's see how much damage is this going to be able to do. Okay. Alright. Not bad. 4.2k. Alright, so I'm back with this particular scenario. So let's apply a level 2 buff. So I think it's fair since we apply a level 2 debuff. So I'm going to apply this particular buff. So just so you guys know, Soneto's buff basically damage dealt plus 20%. Alright, the damage taken is whatever. We're not going to be able to see that here. We're trying to look at our bonus offensively. And penetration rate 15%. This doesn't apply for Genesis damage as far as I know. However, keep in mind that DK do have a mixture of both mental and Genesis. I'm gonna go with buff, do this, and do this. So let's see if this is going to do more damage or less damage with the buff. Alright. 5,100. Alright, that's pretty interesting. Alright, let's try the same for Limbo 13. I'm gonna aim this particular soldier at the back, the police officer. So you can see this one less in terms of the reality defense and mental defense, B+. So is this going to be a little bit more different, right? So I'm going to try a debuff. I'm going to use this. We're going to use the ultimate. And that's it. Alright, you're going to apply the same process. Debuff. Boom. Okay, debuff is applied. Okay. So that's 5398 for debuff. Okay, so same condition for application right here. We're going to apply to this. How much damage is that? I assume this is going to do more. So let's see if this is going to be any different. Alright, this particular stage is extra hard, difficult to test. This particular stage give a Moxie +2. So again, buff, DK, and let's go. No crit. Okay. Alright, that's the regular one. Okay, so 5970. Now, this is what my findings are currently, so far. As you can see, if I were to apply debuff from Baby Blue, alright, and Soneto's buff, it does seem like consistently, based upon all of these stages that I've tested, the buff from Soneto seems to do more damage. Alright, like you can see, almost, you know, 20 to 30% damage increase right here, which can be kind of crazy. For some of these maybe less, but depending, alright, it does seem like the higher the stage goes, the more damage I was able to do. Now, Soneto's buff does have two properties which I just want to be very fair, which is going to be number one, it gives you the damage dealt. Number two, it also gives you penetration rate. And this penetration rate is going to be beneficial to, you know, the mental damage or reality damage, right, in particular. Now at first I thought, okay, maybe I just want to do this specifically just to test out the theory for Genesis damage, because if the Genesis damage is true damage, that means it makes a lot of sense that you can't, debuff shouldn't be able to do much, right? It's a true damage after all, so it doesn't matter if the enemy has high defense or not, because you are still going to ignore them completely, right, being Genesis damage and stuff. So buff makes more sense. Now, do keep in mind though, there's no character as far as I know right now that only does Genesis damage. DK on this particular ultimate skill, it still does a combination of mental damage alongside as well. So I figured let's try out a little bit of a different approach. So let's test out mental damage in particular. If this is going to have the same application right here, debuff versus buff, which is better for mental damage. Okay, so for this testing, I'm be using Druvis tree, just to show you guys the mental damage. This is going to apply for reality damage as well. I believe it should be the same. As you can see, I have a Druvis tree right here. If you guys are not aware, Druvis tree does mental damage, right, on both the attacks. So we're going to feature her alongside with Baby Blue. I'm going to perform some debuffs. Alright, so as you can see, damage taken reduction for all, alright, when the caster is in stats up and position statuses. But it doesn't matter because we're going to test against the same enemy. So I'm going to test against this particular Terror Lean Worm right here. Alright, so this particular guy has a reality defense and mental defense of B+. So same, right? So we're going to apply a debuff first. So this is going to basically reduce mental defense minus 25%, alright? And then we're going to use a Druvis tree, level 1 of this particular skill. So let's have a look. Alright, so 1793, that's going to be with a debuff, right? Alright, so same testing. So now we're going to apply a level 2 buff. Alright, so hopefully both are level 2. So this one is going to increase my damage dealt. So let's see if this is going to do more damage, right? So we did use the level 1 for Druvis the third. So debuffs versus buffs, hopefully I don't crit right here. That was a crit. 5th try. Hopefully it works this time. Alright, apply on the same worm. No crit, so we get an accurate... Okay, as you guys can see right there. So now I'm going to test it on this last source right here, right? We are most likely going to do less damage in general, right? But hopefully still a gauge. So I thought this would be an interesting test. So let's test a debuff. We're going to do this. We're going to apply this level 2 debuff from Baby Blue, where this is going to basically increase damage taken plus 20% for all enemies. So level 2 debuff. Alright, 1775. So this time with buff from Soneto. Last source. I think I'm going to go in 2 times, just in case 1 time is a crit. Alright, buff, level 2 buff. 2090. Okay, so let's see if this one works. So we're going to combine this. Aim at last source, do this. And then we're going to use this one. Level 1 of this again. Boom.
I will help you. Penetrate.
So 1363. So based on my testing against this enemy, right? So this is going to be for using Baby Blue versus Soneto. So far, debuff, there's 2 debuff that Baby Blue does. One is minus mental damage. That seems to deal the least impact. So damage taken, the other debuff seems to do way more, right? For level 2. Again, I have to test it with level 2 because this one requires it to be level 2 for this to be mental defense minus 25%, right? And then you can see, for this one, damage taken plus 20% is definitely more beneficial to increase damage taken than to reduce enemies' mental damage. At least on this particular enemy right here that has a A plus mental defense, right? And also, surprisingly, Soneto's buff is going to be the best. Alright, so Soneto's buff actually gives the most in terms of the output, because it basically increases your damage dealt plus 20% and the penetration rate as well, right? Not to forget, this one is going to affect the stuff. So definitely Soneto's buff, this is going to be much more beneficial. So across the board, I think we can all agree that buff is better than debuffs in general, right? So obviously, if you can, you want to apply both buffs and debuffs. But if you have to pick one, it does feel like buffs across the board for mental damage, for Genesis damage, and I believe for reality damage should have the same concept as well. I don't have a Corn Blum to basically test that out because Corn Blum is one of the few only that can do the reality damage minus. It does feel like, yeah, go for buffs. To prove my point, characters like An Lee, how do you spell her name? An Lee, Pickles, these characters are going to shine more than you think. If you're looking for a 6-star, to complement your team, the value of these characters are really high because of based on what I've tested here. So yeah, hopefully this is going to be a useful or beneficial information to a lot of you guys out there, and hopefully with that, this can hopefully answer your question, right? If you are building a team, you can, you know, you have a healer, you have a damage dealer. The third one, who do you want to put? Do you want to put a debuffer or a buffer? Most of the time, a buffer is going to be better. Sonetto is the best one. Everybody gets her for free. Obviously, these two, like I mentioned, very strong candidate as well. Now, one interesting thing in my findings is regarding Sotheby, right? Because Sotheby's debuff is based upon the caster's attack multiplied by 30% of Genesis damage. So by using Sonetto's buff, right, it doesn't really improve the damage because the damage dealt is going to be based upon the initial hit, right? In this case, it's going to be based upon her skill, right? So Genesis damage is poison that ticks afterwards, so it doesn't affect that damage. It seems like Sotheby doesn't really benefit from the buff nor debuff, in particular because of how poison works. So generally, I mean this particular skill, right? Because it's going to be something that's like tick upon, like you can see with buff or without buff, she seems to be doing about 342 based upon the not this one but the tick that you can see. 342, yeah, it's fixed at 342. She will always do the same amount of damage. So poison is a bit different. Alright, DOT seems to be a bit different. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. It's a rather long one, trying to put as much information as I can. But hopefully you guys find this useful. If you guys have anything you want to discuss, feel free to leave your comment section below. I'll try to read the comments and, you know, let me know if there's different things that you guys want me to test as well. As always, subscribe, give this video a like. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day. Goodbye.